Yeah. So, how do you guys practice at home? If you're a guitar player, you use amps. How many of you plug it in your computer through an interface, and that's how you play it back from the monitors directly? How many of you play along with online like backing tracks on YouTube and everything? But most people, when noodling on the guitar, what they do is they just listen to their own guitar, like without anything else, unless you're jamming. And that's how you dial your tones also, right? You tweak the settings on the amp. Everybody likes to listen to a lot of low end also coming out through the amp, right? On the processor also, on your amp section, you turn up the bass, you turn up a lot of low mids also, because that depth that particular thing gives is really nice when you listen to it isolated, right? But that's not how it's gonna be sounding on stage, right? It has to sound good with the rest of the mix and the rest of the band. So the best way to do it is, so basically I'll tell you what the point of this workshop is. A lot of times your songs are produced in the studio environment, and a lot of following that you've gained because of that, and the people who are coming for the shows are of course there for your songs, the way you've written and composed them, the way you've sung them. But a lot of people also expect the same quality, the same sound, the same sonics, the same production on stage, right? Which is very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult to deliver if you're a 3-piece band, 4-piece band. What if you've used some string sections? What if you've used some additional guitars, some percussive instruments, and all of that, right? So all of these things, I mean, basically you have to give them a show, right? They're not just there to listen to your compositions and your like how well you've written the song and everything. They want a complete thing, the entire show. So the best way to do it is it's very easy to learn a DAW. It's not at all difficult. You can download the free softwares and everything. So after you've recorded your song in the studio, make sure you ask for both mixed and unmixed raw stems of the entire session, and you have them in the folder, all of the WAV files, so that you can use them in whatever way you want. Okay? So essentially those stems or all of those instruments, you put it on your software, and suppose you're working on your guitar tone, for instance. So you mute the main guitar channel that you're gonna be playing live on the day of the show, and then create another track which becomes your new guitar track, and then you plug your guitar in, and then dial in the settings in context with the rest of the mix. Right? You'll quickly realize how you want to EQ out the low frequencies, put a low cut filter, get rid of some of the low mids, get some high mids up there, some presence and all of that, right? So that's how you dial the tone, and that's how your bassist, or if you have a keyboard player, and all of those other musicians also dial their tones, and in context of with the rest of the mix, basically, right? So
Sorry, dial the tones means
dial the tone as in create patches. Electric guitar, unlike acoustic guitar, electric guitar would never go directly into the console, right? There'll be a processor or your pedal board or your guitar amp involved, which will alter the tone, right? Enhance it, change it, whatever, add some distortion to it, add some time-based effects like chorus flanger, whatever, EQ it, and then it goes into the console, and that's how you hear it through the speakers. This is something only guitar players would understand. I mean, not rocket science at all, but still in depth, this particular thing is for guitar players. So we'll try doing that in the session that we have right now. So this is one of the songs from my band. Because we produce it ourselves, record it, mix it, everything we do on our own. So we already have the stems. But if you're not a producer, engineer, and you've recorded a song somewhere in some other studio, then you can, after the final mix and master is done, apart from the mastered track, you can also you have to ask for raw and mix stems, individual stems of all of the tracks, and this is how you load all of them into a session on whatever DAW that you're comfortable with. You can use Reaper, you can use Logic, whatever, and create this session. So this is gonna have all of the things: drums, bass, guitars, and everything. So I'll quickly show you the main guitars that I'm gonna mute, because that is what my guitar player is gonna play.
Like you want to put on a show that sounds full, that sounds like there is enough stuff happening in the performance.
Exactly.
And guess what? Can you guys take a guess? Which would be one of the fewer rock bands? One of the no. I mean, in India, I'm talking about India's context. In India, the foremost rock band, which is Pentagram, is the first band that started playing to a click. If you've ever seen Pentagram perform, their performance sounds massive. It sounds amazing because there's so much stuff that's going on a backing track, and this doesn't take away anything from the performers, right? They're still performing. There's a backing track that they're performing to, but
a lot of people would call that cheating, like playing to a backing track. But then the audience is never gonna care about that, right?
Exactly.
People want the show. There'll always be other bands, your other musicians or your competitors and all of those people who would think they are sounding good because they're using backing tracks. We won't do that. We'll stay true to what we want.
That's what musicians will
can.
think your audience
Exactly,
will not care about.
but it's not about that. If you want to sound better and if you want the audience to have a better experience, then you would go overboard with all of those things.
Like say for example with you guys also, with Odyssey, there are a lot of extra layers that you guys don't necessarily have as a part of your performance, but those layers added into the song would help a lot in terms of bringing on the overall consistency in terms of performance also. Yeah. The point is that you shouldn't just sound good for one gig. With the backing track, you can be consistent in terms of your performance also because you're playing to a click now. And all of your stuff is essentially going to be replicated because you're not going to change in tempo, your performance is not going to vary. You'll have a lot more consistency in terms of quality.
So why a backing track when you can do Ableton?
I mean, it's the same thing.
In Ableton you can play a loop the number of times you
Exactly,
want. That can be more.
But unlike this particular thing, if you're a rapper, if you're a hip hop artist, it's gonna be a single loop playing on for a number of bars, right? But unlike our kind of music, see, elements are changing, the composition is changing, a lot of things are changing every say 15 seconds or 20 seconds. So we cannot have a single loop playing, right? We have to arrange it in a certain way.
And even if you arrange different parts and trigger them separately.
Yeah, because you'll need another person to do that. But we are very busy doing our own stuff, right? We are playing guitars all the time, either playing guitars or drums or singing or playing bass. So we want to be independent. We want just the backing track to handle everything on its own. We just have to trigger it. We have to click spacebar, go to the marker in your session. We'll get to that, and just trigger it once so that it keeps going on till the end of the song, which is when you hit spacebar again and stop.
And what is going to happen if you leave the elements, like you leave the full track on there, and on the top of that you do a layering of drums and stuff? So is that going to...
Drums you're not going to be able to play on top of each other.
Exactly. There will always be a flam because it's the kind of element that has got the most transient. So if there's snare drum playing on the backing track and your drummer is also playing the snare drum...
then you're going too far into the other domain. Then you're essentially just playing a track. Then nobody's going to be interested in watching that either. What you need
so
to
all
have
of
is
those
a balance
differences, mistakes, the human errors and all of those things that are gonna happen when the drummer is playing, the guitarist is playing, that is, all of those things are natural errors, right? So that is what differentiates your live performance from a performance or from a DJ playing a song through the console, like pre-recorded. Everything is like pre-recorded, right? That's how you differentiate between
this is like a
DJ show and a band performance, right?
If you have drums playing on top of drums, you can tell that they're two drums.
Yeah, two drums playing.
They never fall in place together.
They will never
100% accurate.
No, you cannot 100% play on the grid.
And plus, it'll sound chaotic.
Yeah.
Why you don't want two drums? When you have a drummer who can play better live, who can
Yeah.
actually perform live, that performance will any time be better than it being played on the track. Yeah.
Can we ask the mix engineer to give a wave file counting everything which is required, and we can use that wave file in the
Of
show?
course, that's what
Yes.
you should do.
That's what we are doing on ourselves. But this is something that you can ask your engineer. You can call them up or meet them up
Ask
or
them
go
for
to their
stems.
studio and tell them ki you want all of these elements muted and all of these at a certain volume.
Okay.
So
And
it will
send
be
me a mix down
one-time
of that.
activity.
Yes.
But because we are not very sure of how it's gonna translate, so we might want to come back after we do our first show with the backing track. We might realize that no, the acoustic guitars were a little too loud. The FOH engineer or our engineer tells us, ki, yeah, this particular element I think you should reduce in the. So you'll always have to go back to your engineer and ask them to do it. But it's better to just learn a basic DAW and have the stems with you so that you can do all of these small alterations yourselves and bounce it. So now my click track is also going on here. I'll quickly go to the backing track wala section and yeah, so backing track basically it's a mix down of a set of elements as we discussed, right? So certain things that you have to remember while preparing your backing tracks. Again, too many elements are not required. Certain elements that you're going to be playing live, don't keep it in the backing track. It will just make the mix muddy, right? Apart from that, again, your backing track cannot have a lot of low end. Just similarly, as I told you about the guitar tones, right? Because it'll just make things muddier. The bass will not sit in the mix. The drums, kick drum and everything, that will go for a toss. You cannot have a lot of high mids also in the backing track, otherwise your guitars and vocals won't cut through in the mix. So just try to keep it a little spaced out, not too heavy, not too compressed and everything. Next is between all of the tracks that you're going to be performing live, you're going to be creating a backing track of each of them, right? So make sure you normalize the volume so that your FOH doesn't have to keep moving the fader around for every song and balance the backing track.
What do you mean by normalize the volume?
Normalize is a feature or a plugin or a tool that is there in DAWs that sets the volume of all of the elements. Whatever you click on and then normalize, it sets it to a particular volume, but then it essentially means keeping the volume same throughout.
Essentially
Of the
meaning
backing
four
track.
backing tracks are there, they'll all be
At the same level.
of loudness. Imagine if you move from one backing track to another and this one's louder, then your whole performance will go for a toss.
Okay, yeah.
And the most important thing, you have to practice with the backing track
Yes.
in your jam sessions. As I told you, to
Yeah.
replicate everything that you can.
And if
I
you
mean-
don't have any ears for when you're playing the backing tracks, it becomes very.
That's what. So if you don't have, more than listening to the backing track, it's much more important to listen to the click track, because that is what's gonna keep you in track with the song, right? And in smaller venues, if you have the click tracks on your wedges, it's
your
gonna be
audience.
audible outside also, which is not gonna look good, sound good, and that's not how you do it. Which is why for smaller venues, when people or the vendors or the organizers won't have the budget for wireless in-ears and everything, we have this backup, the wired headphone amp.
So let's quickly show them the structure of how the backing track would go to the PA and
Yeah.
what would go to the monitors and how it would go to the
Exactly.
this. I think they'll get a better idea
Yeah.
of that.
Similarly with the click track also, I'll just give you a brief of that. So click track is basically my metronome playing on the song, which is mapped to the time signature, tempo and the structure of the song. See this thing. So this is in 4x4, 125 BPM. There is no tempo changes or time signature changes whatsoever, but there can be songs when there is a tempo drop from 125 it goes to 120 or something like that. So your metronome should follow that. The reason why you export the click track from your session and not use a random metronome app or a software is because that won't be mapped. You'll have to set the tempo, but then it'll never automate, like map to the automation of the track, right? So you basically bounce it right from the session. Again, click tracks also should be same throughout, volume wise. Otherwise, what if it's very low in one of the tracks and your drummer can't hear the click track, you can't hear the click track, and then you lose track of time. So make sure you do that. And also have 2 bars or 4 bars or whatever you prefer, those many bars empty before the song actually, or from when you're supposed to play the song, so that it cues you in, right? And what we do is, we have in total some 3 bars as a pre-roll on the click, and we also have our voices, like just spoken words over there that gives us the cue. So it's a lot of times it's like, I'm not sure if I have it, but then it goes like this in our ears. 2, 3, 4, band come in, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So that there's that spoken voice which only we can hear in the ears, so that we know exactly when to start and when to come in. Makes things very easier.
In fact, you can have that for when the chorus is gonna come in.
Exactly, yeah. When the song's gonna end, song ending in 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you know exactly when to stop, when to come into the chorus, and all of those basic cues. So I've mentioned that here, see.
Every big performance that you've seen, everyone has this tech setup happening behind stage.
So basically cues or directions to
From
help.
Carnival to Porcupine to everybody. You might think they're all rock bands that don't do this, everybody does this.
Yeah.
That is...
So how do you set it up in a way that audience doesn't listen to the...
That's what I'm just gonna show right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so metronome is not required for the vocalist, right?
It is. It's his choice. I mean, a lot of times he does, because what if there's a 2-bar gap between the pre-chorus and the chorus? There's just this silence, and then all of them come together, bang on, like right together.
Okay.
But the vocalist doesn't have a click. Means he won't be able to figure out where exactly he has to come in, right? So it's always preferable to have click track in everybody's monitors, in ears, I mean. So I'm just gonna export this particular thing here. So first of all, without the click, just the backing tracks. I'm gonna need two audio tracks basically. One's gonna be the backing track and one is going to be the click. I cannot have those two in the same audio file. Otherwise, I won't be able to isolate them and send them separately as 2 different inputs into the mixer, so that I can get 2 different outputs. Because only the backing track is going into the PAs, but in your wedges or in your in-ears, both backing track and click is gonna be there. So I'm just gonna have a separate bounce of this thing. Let's just listen to it and figure out if any EQing or balancing or something like that has to be done, that you can figure out. Always be mindful of what other elements are gonna be there. So you just, as I told you, do not have a lot of low end on the tracks unless you're using 808s or subs, synth basses and everything. Apart from that, just make sure it has got space for your drums, your electric guitars, your bass and your vocals. So right now there's drums going on, I'm gonna mute that. Sounds pretty decent to me because these are mixed stems. They're mixed in context with the rest of the elements. So it's already been cleaned up, balanced, EQ'd, compressed,
So you can
pitch
ask the
corrected.
engineer to give you mixed tempo.
Yeah.
If we take that and like if we remove some stems or mute some of them when we export the file, so it's going to come with the same results. It doesn't mess up the results.
I'm sorry, can you repeat
As
the
in?
question?
So when the engineer sends me the mix stems, so I mute some of them, I let some of them be there. So when I export the file, the audio file, so the balance remains the same. It doesn't.
Yeah, the balance will stay the same as your mix. So say for example you take out the drums from your song, then the keys and all of that will remain the same that they were in the song that you mixed.
Okay.
It will stay the same because you asked for stems that are
Already
mixed stems, which are
And
already
why?
mixed.
And why do you recommend asking for the stems which are not mixed?
Because they're already cleaned up. They're fitting in context with each other.
Acha, unmixed you're
Unmixed,
asking?
unmixed.
Unmixed in case you want to alter the sound of, like you want to go back to something. If say there's a guitar track, a lot of low end has been cut from that, but then you realize no, you want a little bit of low mids going on, some 150, some 170. But what if it's not there? It's always good to have all of the files, like the original recorded files of your song. You might need it in future. So I'm just gonna quickly export this.
There's one question. Yeah, please ask.
So there will be always a disadvantage that we need to balance the rest of the, let's say for example the bass has been tracked on the backing track, then the drums will need to be balanced based on the volume which is on the backing track, because we cannot change the volume.
No, it'll in fact be the other way around. So in a live performance, the backing track is not really the loudest element. The main performers will be the loudest element, and the backing track will just be added to add a touch of.
Yeah.
Not the other way around. It's not like backing track is the loudest
And you're gonna be just
it's the other
filling
way
in.
around.
Yeah. Basically, you're gonna be the loudest people like audible through the PAs, whatever instruments that are being played live, and backing track is just to fill in and give that extra emphasis and extra fullness. They forget to turn off the amp and cabinet section from the processor, and there's just feedback on stage and really messes up the sound. So if you want to use an amp, if you ask the vendors or organizers that what amp is gonna be there on the day of the show, and if you know that the tone of the amp and if you prefer using it, then make sure you turn off the amp and cab from your processor at least. And if you want to use the amp section of your processor and just run the cabinet, a lot of times that's also possible. So suppose this amp that we have here, इसका जो cabinet section है and the amp section, it's connected using a cable over there. So you can pull that cable out from the amp section and put it, you can use it as the cabinet just for that ambience on stage, right? Cabinets are not very colored, so they don't alter the sound that much. They still do, but then that is something that can be solved. You can EQ it on the console or whatever. And drive, of course I'm using the drive. This is just one of the patches that I'm just gonna show. Amp, I'm using an EVH 50 ka model. Very popular metal high gain amp. Cabinet is also my EVH 50 4x12 cabinet. Noise gate I'm using, which is a replica of Boss NS2. And there's this EQ on board, which is a semi-parametric EQ. You can dial in what frequency you want, either to cut or boost, and then cut or boost it how much ever you want it to. I'm gonna play the track here. I'm just gonna tell you the chords. Very simple stuff. I'm just gonna play a part on loop here. Tune the guitar first. And on your processor also don't max out the volume. Just keep it at some 2 o'clock or like 70% or 50% or something like that, okay? You don't want to keep the volume on full over there, because then the engineer will have to put a pad or something like that. You should just avoid that. And not very low also, so that the console, the FOH has to really bump up the gain, and then the noise also comes up along with that. The noise floor also comes up. It's always you're talking about how to make the solo tone different from the...
I'm asking if he puts a pad, right? So will if I increase the volume of my solo, as guitarists like to
So
do.
what I prefer or what I ask people to do is you make a duplicate of your rhythm patch, and then for the solo patch you just add whatever you want to on top of that. So keep the bass tone exactly the same so that there is not a lot of difference between your solo patch. You don't change the amp and cap entirely so that it sounds totally different. What you do is you boost up some of the mids, थोड़ा जिससे presence आए solo को, some high mids, some of the top end, and you add a little bit of delay or a little bit of reverb. Delay is generally better. With distorted guitar tones you don't really need a lot of reverb, but delay does the job. So that's how, and just increase the volume, put up the volume by like 2 dBs or something so that your solo just stands out. But EQing is the trick.
Cut through.
Yeah, you shouldn't just bump up the volume by like 5 dBs. That will not really make the solo patch sound better. Just EQing some of the low mids out and just adding some of the high mids works. हो गया ना तेरा tune? And go to your G and your D. So just 8 notes on guitar. Open, louder. That's not how you're gonna be playing on stage. You're gonna be really beating the shit out of your guitar. So just play it like that. What is the first thing that you can make out from this? What do you want to do to your guitar tone? Like from scratch, is it sounding good? Is it sitting well with the mix? Is it too loud? Is it making it muddy? What's happening? What's going on?
A little loud.
A little loud. I'm just gonna turn on the drums also over there just to replicate how it's gonna sound with the drums. Doing, I just select a frequency. I just go to the gain knob here. You can come in front if you want to look at it, look at the screen. So what I do is I just bump up the gain on any one of the bands, roughly जहाँ पे मेरे को लग रहा है there is some problem. So suppose we are working on the mids right now. ठीक है, so I just bump up the gain by like 5-6 dBs or something, and then go to the frequency and sweep around to find the sound that I'm hearing in my head, like that particular frequency, whether I want to bump it up or put it down. So just keep playing. This is sounding too screechy for me, for my taste. My mids are sorted, going to my low mids. Here there is some muddiness going on. Just play. guitar tone sounds like this on stage? Usually it does. A lot of comments. Keep it. So most consoles that are gonna be there on the day of the show, they get only 4 bands apart from your low cut and high cut. And it's difficult to really critically, surgically EQ out stuff. So you do whatever best you can from your side, and then depending on the venue, the acoustics of the venue, the PA system, how well it's tuned and everything else, it can be just tweaked a little bit to make it sound better. बजाना फिर से. Much cleaner now, right? What do you think about the drive? The amount of drive, does it?
More drive.
More drive?
Slightly, like a little bit of saturation.
Let's try it out. So there's two ways to do that. I'll show you. So you actually 3 ways. You either bump up the drive knob on your pedal or whatever parameter you have here, or you increase the level of your pedal, the drive pedal, or you increase the amps gain. So presence wouldn't really increase the drive, it'll just make it sound a little more airy and everything. It does, but here the question is drive. So if you're chugging, if there's a chugging part, a muted part going on, then a second, and you need to have नीचे ऊपर साइड. So if there's a chugging part in the song, right? If it feels like you need more drive and you increase presence in this particular scenario, it's not gonna make your chug sound better. Only increasing the drive parameter on your pedal, or the level parameter on your pedal, or the gain parameter on your amp is gonna do it, right? So you have to figure out what you begin with, right? Because increasing a lot of drive from your pedal might make it sound noisier, and then you'll have to make the noise gate also a little tighter, and you're gonna keep going in circles, while something as basic as just readjusting the gain amp on the amp is gonna solve the thing. So let's try doing that, because in this scenario we're not using a clean or a low gain amp or a mid like driven crunch amp or something like that. It is a proper high gain heavy metal amp, which is the EVH 5150. So just try doing that. ये वाला knob बढ़ाना ना, इधर आ. Just put this thing up. Just keep putting it up. So when you do that, you'll notice what is the characteristic of the drive that you're getting from the amp. So as I increase the gain on my amp, it gave me a lot more drive on the bottom end. Is that what you want, or is it the high mid saturation you want? So sometimes drive is different all over the place, man. Like every pedal has got a different characteristic of drive. Distortion can be anything that is clipped, right? So it is going to have different characteristics. I'm not a very big fan of this low, like bottom end wala drive in this particular context, because it's not a lot of chugging part that I want to do here. So I'm just gonna turn the drive back on this. Okay, that an unnecessary low end saturation, low mid saturation, I've gotten rid of that. Now I go to the drive pedal and then try and bump up the volume first, not the drive, because increasing the drive on the drive pedal is gonna make it noisier, right? So my volume is at 80% right now. I'm gonna try and put it at 95 or 98. Does the job for me. Earlier it was like this. Now it's a lot more sustained than this. This is dying out earlier. Okay? Need more gain. I need a little more presence also now, because this pickup sounds a little dark to me. I made this particular patch for a different guitar which is naturally very bright, those pickups. So which is why I turned down the tone knob. But ideally, if you're playing rock or metal, your tube screamer, do you know about that particular pedal? Ibanez tube screamer. It's a very popular go-to drive pedal for a lot of rock guitar players. And the ideal setting, what people recommend, is drive on 0, volume on full, and tone on full. So my volume is on full, drive is on 0. 0 doesn't mean there's no drive at all, it's just clean. No. Drive is the minimum, drive on 0 is the minimum gain that pedal can produce. But the moment you turn it off, it's gone. Let's try increasing the gain from the drive from the drive pedal. This is the characteristic sound of the tube screamer, more high mid saturation. Too noisy. Dial it back down. So now at this particular point, if you're still struggling to get clean gain, more high gain out of your guitar, you tried increasing the drive from the pedal, volume from the pedal, your amp, you're already using the amp with the highest gain possible relatively with other amps. You tried all of that and you're still not able to achieve that tone, but you still need more drive, and you go around tweaking it, making it a lot noisier, a lot of clutter, a lot of high mids and all of that, but you don't look at it from the point of view of the source. How about trying another guitar? How about trying another pickup to begin with, right? That doesn't really need that much of a push to make it scream, right? So if you go on stage, or if you're struggling with your guitar tone, trying to get a good metal guitar tone out of your processor, and you're using a Fender Stratocaster ka single coil bridge pickup, not gonna happen, right? So avoid doing that. Moving on to cabinet and noise gate, I already told you this. If I turn off the noise gate, this is what happens. And I turn on the noise gate back in. Do you know how to dial in noise gate settings, or do you want to get into that critically? I think everybody knows. That's it. And my EQ, we've already EQ'd it. Turning the gain back down by a little, the tone also. decent, not bad. Okay, let's try and dial the bass guitar also into the mix. Bass play करेगा कोई? आजा. हाँ, so on bass also I'm driving. I prefer to have a little bit of drive, and I use a mid scoop sound. I turn down my mids, low mids basically, turn up the high mids and treble, and a lot of low end also. So I'm a big fan of Ampeg bass amp heads, and I like the sound of that. Not a big fan of Mark bass and Hardcake and all of the other ones. Unfortunately, I don't have an Ampeg here. Play.
So moving the mids right now.
No, I'm just changing the amps. Yeah, I'm going through different amp options that I have. Let's keep it to this. See, this is with the mids turned up. This is the high mid section. Turning back the treble. And the cabinet type. This is with the cabinet off. This is my 4x10 cab. 4x10 cab is basically 10-inch ke 4 drivers. It's about this wide, this tall. And 8x10 cabinets have got a lot more depth and character to it, which is like this high.
Right.
There are 8 drivers in the cabinet. Preferred for bigger venues. See, this is how much better it sounds. Okay, I don't see the EQ option here. But similarly, you just dial in if your processor has got an EQ. Similarly, the way you did for guitars, you can do it for this also. Play karna. Play karte hain.
Start, see.
Just space bar daba de. First one. See, I've kept my guitars relatively louder because I'm playing it live. It feels more natural if the thing that the audience are looking at is heard properly, right? Makes a lot of sense. Similarly with the bass, you can bump up the bass a little bit. Bass का volume fader से बढ़ा दे बस track. We'll see. you do that in your jam room or at your home studio or wherever you guys practice, just play, all of you guys play together. If it's not accessible to have drums also, you can just keep the drums on from the backing track. And now yourself just balance the elements out. If you feel like there's more space for the pads to come up, if you feel like the acoustic guitars can come up still. So which is why I told you to ask the stems from the engineer so that you can do all of that yourself. Listen to it on a good pair of speakers or headphones and figure it out how to sound even better. Like, it can always get better, right? So that's how you balance everything out, and then after you've done that, then export the backing track and click track separately and have that in your DAW and prepare it for the show.
One question.
Mm-hmm.
Question.
Yeah.
सपोज अभी लाइव ड्रम ऑलरेडी आपके पास आपने रिकॉर्ड किया हुआ है इधर
Drums.
हाँ
हाँ.
और सब एलिमेंट्स जो कुछ भी है
हाँ.
लेकिन सपोज अभी हम दोनों ही है
हाँ.
ओके और रिकॉर्ड भी नहीं करना चाहते तो प्रोग्राम करके भी कर सकते हैं ये सब चीज़
हाँ, of course. Drums program करके कर सकते हैं. Why not?
Why not? Of course.
अरे अभी even if you want to perform as a solo artist, solo musician, a lot of people would just prefer going with an acoustic guitar and just doing
Correct.
acoustic guitar and vocals, right? But what if you have a backing track which has got drums and bass in it? It'll just be a better experience from the audience if the song requires that. If it's solely acoustic set that you want to do, that's fine. But then the only thing that's holding you back from doing that is you're not aware how easy this is. Like, this is
Exactly.
not
I mean, that was the
rocket science.
intention of today's discussion.
It's not very difficult. And even using in-ears and everything, there's a big misconception that only bigger bands can afford having in-ears. It's really not that much. You can get a cheap set of earphones for as low as 1500 rupees, 2000, 2500. KZ is a good brand. It doesn't provide a lot of isolation, but then you can still work with that. It's still way better than performing with bad monitors in a bad venue with bad acoustics.
And
Not
on
gonna
top of
give you
that,
the vibe.
you'll get the consistency.
Yeah.
If it's your in-ears, then you know every time that you're going for a performance, that
Yeah,
have
you
to
don't
sing
have
it.
to care about the venue or stage or the monitors or the MOH engineer, FOH engineer. It's just gonna sound so much better. And you're gonna have a good time playing. So, I'm gonna import these two files here. Joel ka password. Going into the PA. But I
No,
don't.
I mean, we don't want the click to go to the PA, we want the click to go to the monitor.
So I'm just gonna turn the output to no output from here, which is this section is my main out, master.
I mean, forget about that, that's what the mix engineer would do.
Yeah.
We're just trying to show you what it would look like.
And this is my aux 1 or 2 or 3, whatever is routed to what, and it's going there. So suppose this is for my drummer, this one is for my guitar player or myself, whatever. It's just gonna go to that now. Over there.
So now I'm able to send the click track only on stage, the backing
Not
track
on the PA.
on the PA, and I can also send the click track to my in-ears.
Backing, I've reduced it in the PA, it's just coming on the wedge. And in the headphone amp for my in-ears also. Somebody like to play a section and see what it sounds like. It's just 4 chords throughout the song. Don't worry about it. So this is where my cue comes in. Suppose 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Band come in. 1, 2, 3. 3, 4, and the song starts. Right? Then click can go much louder in your earphones the way you prefer it, so that no matter what happens, at no point you stop hearing the click, because it's gonna throw you out entirely. So yeah, try it out in the jam room multiple times. Every time you practice with this setup. As far as gears are concerned, you don't really need this fancy, like that fancy of an interface, because you don't really care about the preamps and all of that stuff, because you're not using that anyway. It just has to be a decent one with good quality converters. Scarlett 2i4 is a good option, cheap option, and it does the job. And DAW, the
whichever one you
easiest,
guys
cheaper
use.
one,
Yeah.
you
can use Reaper, you can
Reaper,
use Logic,
can do everything.
whatever you use. Yeah. Whatever you're comfortable with.
GarageBand, I'm not sure about its routing
can-
capabilities, but
You can route outputs also.
then it's fine. And what else do you need? During practice, your jam sessions, you can have the click on the monitors, wedges, but then try not doing that. Invest in this particular
Listen
thing.
years or whatever, and then you guys can actually.
This is your personal monitoring. You can have a 4-channel headphone amp as well, which is also cheap. Like just buy it for the entire band, and you can plug your headphones separately on that. That way also you can do it.
Correct.
Every jam room has got a 16-channel or a 12-channel mixer with say 3 or 4 aux tracks. If your band has got more members, then you can split the signals, can figure something out. Like there is a solution to a lot of problems that you feel like cannot be solved. There is a workaround for all of that, and I mean just try to sound better, enjoy better when you're playing on stage, and make the people also like have the experience. And if there's any other doubts, you can just ask.
Exactly.
Whatever things you're
suggesting to buy that unit.
Not
have
this. You can buy any. You can buy a Behringer also. Nobody cares.
How much is this one?
Behringer 4-channel output you would get for some 7,000.
Yeah.
And this one?
This is some 55, 45,000.
But this is for the studio, no? Because you don't really need that for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Just get the.
it's
you don't really need
that
an
expensive
one.
because of the quality preamps on this
Yeah.
inputs, but you're not using the inputs at all.
Correct. Exactly. Yes.
Not gonna
I'll just come
affect the
here. One
quality.
second. Yeah.
For consistency across your studio and your live tones, do you suggest having a pedal which you take to the studio with you, like a multi-board, or you have your laptop in which you carry your studio tones?
You
and
could
your
do
gears?
that also.
You can
honestly.
actually use your laptop for
Yes,
that.
you
Just
could use-
it should be a powerful laptop. It
Right.
cannot be an i3 processor and you're running STL tones, heavy plugins on it
Yeah.
that can
Exactly.
just go off and give you latency and multiple other issues. If you rely on that system, that's what, practice with that during your jams. Make all the possible mistakes you can during your practice sessions.
But you can do that. A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
A lot of guitar players now
And it
use
sounds really good.
this to make guitar tones. Yes.
Sounds really good.
बैकिंग ट्रैक में जो अपन स्टेम यूज करने वाले हैं तो वो भी मिक्स और मास्टर्ड होनी चाहिए या नहीं?
मिक्स होने चाहिए, मास्टर होने की जरूरत नहीं है, क्योंकि वो लेवल वैसे भी FOH पे इंजीनियर बढ़ा सकता है अगर बढ़ाना चाहे तो. वो लिमिट करने की जरूरत नहीं है. इनफैक्ट लिमिट मत करो. That is better. The more
It's
dynamic it
basic
is, the better
EQ,
it is.
Yeah, basic EQ and like the key is to make a good balance.
और अगर चाहे तो बाद में the engineer can also EQ it and do whatever if
on
need
the
be.
master, yeah.
So you said that when you're sending it to the console, it shouldn't clip, right?
Correct.
And at the same time, you mentioned loudness. So like, is there a recommended level? Because for mastering, we use -14 LUFS.
LUFS won't make sense here because we're not really sticking to a digital system, right? We're not putting files, we're not putting out WAV files or working in that domain. So it just not hot enough so that it clips at the board. That's it. At the FOH engineer. Anything that is within the limits of what the FOH engineer asks you, that's what's recommended. And then he can increase it further if he feels the need to on the PA. That's his job then. Your job is done. Your job is to give him a separate click track and a backing track. Yeah.
So can we have like multiple backing tracks, like some of strings, some of
Yes, you can.
Yes.
That's even better if you can do that.
But
for
you
that
need
you need more outputs.
more number of outputs. You'll need something like that. Scarlett 18i20 or something like that.
You can do that though. If you do that, that's even better because then you're
More control.
mixing engineer has even more stems or even more individual tracks that he can.
How the automated tones work?
Automated tones is in your guitar and bass tones.
Your guitar tones, like a lot of players just
Automate it with the track. Yeah, so that is also something you can do.
Switching
you can
between.
switching between
Yeah.
tones.
So if
So
you
at that particular part section of the song, your guitar will automatically switch from your clean tone to a distorted tone. A lot of processors have got that capability.
Correct.
You can connect
Bar-wise,
it.
yeah.
You can use the same processor, same tone from the processor, but then through a MIDI cable, it's connected to your computer, which tells it to change the tone and all of that.
You can very easily do that.
Yeah.
There are many ways to do it. Easy way to also do it is you can use your phone nowadays. Android
Yeah.
phones have an app that can you can trigger with that also.
But then you have to make sure the session, your backing track session, and the other session is also synced.
Yeah.
So otherwise, it wouldn't know when to change when exactly that part is coming in.
That is what I was saying. Like how to sync the tone changes and the backing track together.
Yeah, so basically you can have 2 more tracks over there for your guitar and bass.
And switch
And
them
then,
on.
and then just
automatically add
automate it there. So you have to, suppose you have a clean tone and a distorted tone. You're using a software plugin for that. You make 2 channels for your guitar.
Correct.
On one you put your clean tone, and the other one you put your driven tone. Make a third one, you put your solo tone. And then in different sections of the songs, you automate the
track will be
mute
on or off.
parameter. Yeah. So it will automatically, when that particular track reaches, or the cursor
58,
reaches
let's
that
say.
over there, the rest of the 2 tracks are automatically muted and the third one is on. That's how you do for your guitars, you can do for your bass, keyboards and everything. But then again, your system has to be very powerful to do that.
It's okay, everybody here has new M1
Yeah.
laptops, so
So once again, can you just tell about that NES ka transmitter?
So I'll tell you, from the console, the auxiliary section of your console, a cable, it will be running either through the console directly onto the stage using a snake, or digitally, whatever. That is not your headache, that is somebody else's headache. You just have to tell them.
As a performer, what am I recommended to
Exactly.
have
You
with
just
myself?
have to ask the vendor or the organizer that you're gonna be using in your monitors on stage. And you, ideally, in most ideal cases, you are supposed to carry only your set of earphones, because this is something you don't want. You don't
Share,
expect
you can't
them
share
to.
that.
Yeah, exactly. You shouldn't. This is something you carry yourself. And regarding this, you always have this as a backup option if at all the one that they have fails or not sounding good, or because this has happened with me. I've asked for this particular thing, wireless in-ears. They provided some Chinese cheap brands or something like that, and the volume was fluctuating. I was hearing random noise in between that was really throwing me off when I'm performing. So during sound check, I realized that, and I switched back to this.
What is this device called?
This is a personal headphone amp, Behringer PM2, I think.
PM2.
Yeah, P2.
And this is for how much?
This is some 7,000 rupees. But then it's recommended for jamming and everything, or for smaller venues. But for bigger stages, just tell the vendor that you want to use in-ears, and you're gonna be bringing your earphones along, and they have to give you the transmitter and receiver. So from the console, that cable will run, that will go into the receiver, which is a unit with 2 antennas, and then they'll give you a separate device, which will be your transmitter.
That you put on the back.
Exactly, that will have an antenna.
This will be the receiver in case of the in-ears. It's a
Receiver in case of in-ears. If it's a wireless mic, then it's the transmitter, other way around. And you plug your earphone directly into the thing, and there is a volume control over there. Then you can tell them what mix you want and everything. It's very basic. Every vendor has got in-ear wireless in-ears these days.
Super. I hope this has been helpful in terms of you guys understanding how you can implement this in your workflows with your performances.
There was one topic you said we'll be talking about. We didn't talk about it.
Which topic?
Internal communication during performance. If we have to talk to the band. I've seen some big performance like, I mean, audience can't listen.
Okay, so the band leader basically communicates with the rest of the band
Correct,
sometimes.
The rest of the band or the mixing engineer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it works similar in the similar way the click track is working. It's not heard on the PAs. It's just heard on that particular channel.
I mean, how do you
communicate with the?
Yeah. How does it happen?
Acha, if you want to sing as well, but
Exactly,
then
right.
also speak to the engineer. In that particular scenario, I mean, you might need another mic to do that.
Usually there's another mic.
Yeah.
That is dedicated for this.
Because how would he know when to turn your signal off in the PAs and only audible in his
But
earphones?
honestly, for most cases, there is no communication that happens once the show starts.
Yeah. Avoid that. If
Once the
at
show
all
starts,
there is some
the show
technical
starts.
difficulty, you would notice the vocalist telling it out loud ki there is something happening.
But nobody does that.
Yeah.
I mean,
you just get along.
performers
and you try
who are at a certain standard will not, in the middle of a show, you wouldn't tell your engineer to change something. There's usually a separate mic that's dedicated for these conversations. You'd go, so the engineer gets a cue when you're moving to that mic that you're talking about something. That's where you go, usually kept behind, either next to the amp or something. So when somebody's going there, they know that the artist is talking to me about something. That's when the mic is turned on. Then you communicate with the engineer, and then. But usually, once the show starts, you don't either ask for things on the PA.
Yeah, in professional shows, it doesn't
You would never
happen.
see
It
that.
just flows. Like when the show starts for an hour and a half, it will just keep going. We won't notice. Basically, don't do anything that people will notice.
Correct.
It has to be that smooth.
The last show I was assisting the live sound with, the drummer actually requested, the FOH requested another mic for the drummer because he needs to communicate with the drummer during the show. So the drummer has his own mic to speak.
To communicate with the
So that
that's
the
usual
rest of
standard,
the
yeah.
band speaks to the drummer and the
drummer
drummer then
communicates.
speaks to the FOH engineer. That's how they
There are different ways. I mean, usually sometimes it's there might be a one vocalist who's doing the same job. In this case, it's a drummer. But for this, which is why I need to build a team that knows what your standard
Exactly. I
operating
mean,
process
yeah,
is.
just find somebody who's interested in audio and also likes the music that you make or you produce as a band, and who is willing to learn or grow with you, and just ask him to come along for all of your jam sessions. So you just treat him as a part of the band, and that's how he's gonna make you sound good everywhere, and it's just gonna keep getting better and better, because you as performers also, with every show you're gonna get better, right? Same is gonna happen with your engineer also. He's gonna dive in deeper into making you sound better on stage, and with every show he'll realize what has to be done. He'll specifically suggest you things related to your guitar tones, bass tones, drum tones, your performance, your backing tracks, everything, and just suggest you
If
better
you want
things.
talented, smart engineers, we have a bunch of them.
A bunch of them. I picked one from the last batch.
Nice. Okay, that's it. If you guys have any questions or doubts or queries, you can always just give us a call.
Yeah, you can get in
Saurabh, then
contact,
mine.
get in touch.
The EDS